Growing up in the 90s, my life looked pretty standard by most measures. I spent my time hanging out with friends, playing video games, listening to music, and just kind of existing within what you might call an average middle class family experience. I had a mother who stayed home and took care of the kids, and a father who went out every day to work. This dynamic was normal, familiar, and rarely questioned. But even from a young age, something subtle began to sink into my awareness. The word work didn't sound very appealing. Whenever work came up, it was almost always accompanied by groans, sighs, eye rolls, or complaints. Adults talked about it like a burden. Kids learned early that work was something you had to do, not something you wanted to do. It was framed as the opposite of freedom, fun, and happiness, and that framing stuck with me. But at some point I started wondering, why is work bad? Why does that word carry so much negativity? When you really break it down, literally everything you do requires some form of work. Your body is constantly working just to keep you alive. Washing dishes is work, driving to the store is work, going on a hike in the mountains is work. Even sitting down and playing a video game is work on some level. Mental effort, coordination, focus. The literal definition of work is simply activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. That's it. Nothing inherently negative about that, yet culturally we've attached this heavy, unpleasant emotional charge to the word. By the time I reached middle school and high school, that attitude was everywhere. Work sucks. I hate working. Nobody wants to work anymore. That last one especially seemed to come from older generations, aimed directly at younger people. They just don't like to work, they'd say. Wrong-o. Completely missing the point. Even when I was a teenager working at the local Heidi's Deli, that mindset was already baked in. We'd get high, avoid customers, drag our feet, and do the bare minimum. If anything, that was pretty much the norm throughout the late 90s and early 2000s. But it wasn't because we were lazy or incapable or allergic to the effort. It was because the idea of work had already been poisoned. We associated work with boredom, authority, pressure, and obligation, never with creativity, growth, or meaning. And that's where the real problem lies. When the word work becomes something you resent, it doesn't just affect your job, it seeps into everything. Suddenly working on yourself feels like punishment. Working on things you love starts to feel like something you shouldn't have to do. Subconsciously, you begin to avoid growth, effort, and discipline because they've been lumped into the same category as misery. Like some mental no-no zone you're supposed to steer clear of. So I started asking myself, why would this be the case? Why would a word that applies to almost every meaningful action in life carry such a negative emotional weight? I'll let you come to your own conclusions on that, but for me, this video and this message, it's about reclaiming that word. About saying plainly, work isn't bad, and the act of working shouldn't feel like something to dread by default. I genuinely believe that if we paid more attention to our thoughts, and especially the language we use, we could free ourselves from a lot of deeply ingrained mental traps. This is one I felt stuck in for most of my life. While public school helped me in many ways, I also feel that the school system, combined with societal norms and social conditioning, played a role in attaching dissatisfaction and resentment to the concept of work. Things started to shift for me when I began learning about Taoism and listening to one of my favorite motivational speakers, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Through those teachings, I was introduced to the idea of service and what it truly means to serve. Most of us understand the concept of karma. You put out what you want to receive. The same principle applies to service. When you serve the universe will serve you. Once I started approaching life from a place of service, helping others, contributing, showing up with intention, something interesting happened. Even when people had bad attitudes or didn't appreciate the effort, I still felt fulfilled. Because in serving others, I was actually serving myself. I was building a lifestyle rooted in contribution instead of resistance. That shift completely transformed how I viewed work. It no longer felt like a soul-draining obligation. It became something closer to play or practice or purpose. And as a result, passions I thought I'd lost, drawing, music, writing, they all came back to life. They didn't feel like chores anymore. They felt like expressions. We live in a society that often treats free time as the ultimate goal of existence. as if doing nothing is the highest achievement. I want to offer a different perspective. Try finding joy not just in your job, but in working on yourself, learning new skills, becoming more mindful, improving your emotional awareness, enjoying things even more deeply. All of this work, but it doesn't have to be painful. It's necessary work, meaningful work, the kind that allows you to actually enjoy your life and become more of who you want to be. Sometimes I don't even say work anymore, I say applying myself. Or in video game terms, I think of it as grinding XP. You're leveling up. You're unlocking new skills, new abilities, new awareness, and that reframing alone makes all the difference. If you can adopt the mentality that sees work not as something negative, but as a natural and necessary process for progress in any direction, I hope this video helps you loosen that mental block. Because at the end of the day, being a spirit in a body means you're going to be working one way or another. You might as well learn to enjoy it. Of course, that doesn't mean never resting. Please take breaks and enjoy your moments. Balance matters.